We are many, yet one. We are separate in body, yet speak with a single voice. Join us in our chorus. In each of us is the strength of all.
In the whispers of our quiet men
comes the true strength of our voice. Enter and rejoice. Together, one and all, we will help and heal this city's wounds. Order, life, harmony. These are the values of the Selesnya, and these are the three heads of Trostani, Selesnya's voice. Trostani, Selesnya's voice, is a commander with growing appeal and flourishing power. For the reasonable casting cost of 2 white and 2 green mana, Trostani will grant you life gain whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, and that life will be equal to that creature's toughness. But she also has the powerful ability to populate. So just as Selesnya's voice has many heads, so too does a Trostani commander deck have many faucets, many synergies, and even many win conditions. The 2 major themes of this deck are obviously life gain and token generation. The latter focuses more on populating tokens of powerful creatures and finding ways to exploit enter the battlefield effects. As for the life gain strategy, there's a saying: you don't win magic by gaining life, and that's usually true. But we are peace-loving Selesnyans after all, and this is Commander. So in our deck, we can win the game by gaining life, in the case of Felidar's Sovereign and Test of Endurance. This is a secondary strategy of our deck. A great thing to set up as you duke it out with your opponents on the battlefield. Sovereign wins you the game if he's out at the start of your upkeep and you have 40 life. And Test of Endurance does the same for 50 life. These numbers are easily accomplished with the deck. The difficult part is making it to your next upkeep with these obvious wins on the battlefield. But we've got some tricks in store for that. With Test of Endurance, the fact that it is an enchantment and not a creature means much more specific and less likely removal will need to be handy. Strategically waiting to drop this until after your opponents have had a major removal battle and are low on spells is the key. Now with Sovereign, you can also try for that strategy. Or you can wait until the end step just before your upkeep and then instantly Chord of Calling or Elvish Piper it into play. Yes, it is still a fragile creature, but at this point your opponents most likely are going to be tapped out and least likely to have an answer. In addition to Chord, we have tutors such as Elidomri's Call, which is highly underrated and often forgotten, Enlightened Tutor to grab the Test of Endurance enchantment, and the fabulous Sterling Grove. Sterling Grove is an all-out all-star, because while it can be used to tutor for an enchantment, it also is an awesome bit of protection for all enchantments. When Sterling Grove is in play, your enchantments have hexproof, great in combo with Test. Also, as you'll see in a moment, there's some other powerful enchantments we'll be running, and Sterling Grove protects them all. What if someone targets Grove with removal first? Sack it and tutor. It's a great card, a must-have. We have a similar form of protection for creatures from the fabulous Asceticism, another big favorite of mine, which keeps our creatures with hexproof and also lets us regenerate them. Actually, you can target any creature, even your opponents, with Asceticism's Regenerate, which can be a lot of fun if you play politics and want to offer to save an opponent's destroyed creature in exchange for something in return. Both as protection and a way to get extra enter the battlefield effects, I am never without the 1 mana costed Cloud Shift. And speaking of protection, this deck runs a copy of Sigarda, Host of Herons, who is strong enough to be a commander herself, but here gives us that much-needed protection from sacrifice effects. So let's look at our life gain spells. The The first three are pretty obvious. Essence Warden, Soul Warden, and Soul's Attendant give us life whenever any creature enters the battlefield, from us or our opponents. In multiplayer, this shoots your life up early and fast. Suture Priest is an inverted version of this, giving us life for our creatures and draining our opponents for casting theirs. Rock's Faith Mender and Boon Reflection are going to double any life we gain. In this deck, Serra Ascendant is more or less always a 6/6 flying lifelink for 1, and we further both our life gain strategy and later our token creation from cards like Wormcoil Engine and Thragtusk. Archangel of Thune not only has lifelink, but puts a counter on each creature you control whenever you gain life. You'll see in a bit that a sub-strategy is through putting counters on our creatures. And I must say that the Archangel is one of the big stars of this deck. Luxodon Hierarch is a 4/4 for 4 that also gives us 4 life, and will regenerate every creature we control if we sacrifice it. Great for protecting our board from destroy-based wipe. And since we are in green and white, Fracturing Gust is great removal of our own, wiping out both artifacts and enchantments and giving us lots of life in the process. Wall of Reverence is another favorite of mine, giving us life at the end of our turn equal to the power of target creature we control. With all this life gain, we make great use of something like Well of Lost Dreams, which gives us great opportunities to gain major card advantage. In early game, this can give us a few extra card draws, or late game an all-new grip of spells. The deck also runs a lot of creatures that work with life gain, such as a Johnny's Pridemate, or just great equipment that gives us lifelinks, such as Behemoth Sledge and Luxodon Warhammer. As our tokens will come and go, these equipments stay on the field and attached to the new soldiers. True Conviction gives all our creatures lifelink and double strike. Wow! And this is the perfect bridge to the next aspect of this deck: token generation. Trostani encourages token generation as well, and when enchantments like True Conviction are in play, those powerful tokens get even more scary. Before we get into the token generators and the populate theme, let's just see what other banner effects the deck runs. Eldrazi Monument, Collective Blessing, Intangible Virtue, and Phantom General are all part of this strategy. As we populate and create tokens to gain advantage, these spells help make those tokens more and more powerful. A key card for this deck is Mimic Vat. From Thragtusk to Wormcoil to prime picks from our opponent's graves, Trostani's populate ability goes great with Mimic Vat. And just so many of our cards create powerful interactions with it, it's another must-have. So where do our tokens come from? Well, the first key generator actually comes from a land, and that's Grove of the Guardian. While it's still far from impossible in Commander, this is probably the least likely of our generators to see removal, and the regular token creation engine it gives you gets out of hand fast. Additional token generators like Advent of the Worm, Armada Worm, Call of the Conclave, Hornet Queen, Trostani's Summoner, and Increasing Devotion all have an important place within this deck. Obviously, with all these tokens entering our control, a copy of Parallel Lives is a must. And we don't just want to relegate our populate ability to Trostani. Druid's Deliverance protects and populates. Sundering Growth destroys and populates, each a fun surprise. And of course, one of the best populate cards is Growing Ranks, low cost, and we get to populate at the beginning of each of our upkeeps. What other utilities does this deck have? A real hidden treasure is Aura Shards, destroying an artifact or enchantment whenever a creature enters the battlefield under our control. Bow of Nylea gives us stupendous versatility. Damage to flyers, life gain for ourselves, putting cards from our graveyard back into our library, or just some +1/+1 counters for our creatures. What doesn't it do? Speaking of counters for creatures, the deck absolutely runs Gavani Township, Spike Feeder, and Chronicler of Heroes, strengthening our creatures and, in the last case, giving us amazing card draw if timed properly, or used in coordination with that Mimic Vat. Momentous Fall lets us sack one of these high-powered creatures for card draw. as well as giving us life gain from that creature's toughness. Gosh, there's just so much value here. Speaking of which, we get major value from Acidic Slime for destruction, Grand Abolisher for protection, Gyre Sage for ramp, Uvenwald Tracker for creature removal, and Wall of Omens for card draw. Once again, many of these work great with Mimic Vat depending on your situation. So for this deck, we are more interested in creating than destroying. But that doesn't mean we don't want a little bit of removal. And I typically include both Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares, for when our opponents put a major threat on their board that we can't handle. I also like the versatility of Selesnya Charm. Let's take a look at land. You can keep things very budget with mostly just forests and plains. But I always include cards like Evolving Wilds, Grey Pelt Refuge, Sunpetal Grove, Selesnya Guildgate, Terramorphic Expanse, and Vitu Gazi the Tree City. Feel free to spend more if you've got it on everything from shocklands to fetches, but being only in 2 colors means you can have a more relaxed mana base. In the end, Trostani is a deck with multiple strategies, multiple synergies, and that's something I value in Commander. This list should be treated as a starting point. From here, you can adjust the ratios of the many variables within this deck. Feel free to swap out cards for the life gain or token creation that you favor, and tweak the list accordingly. I hope this guide has been of some help to you. Who would you like to see a Commander guide to next? Leave a comment, and you might just get to see a deck lecture built around the Commander you suggest. And this video has been brought to you by the generous support of patron alums at Patreon, and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.